Everyone, welcome. We're thrilled to have you here. I'm super happy to be hosting my dear friend Abigail. And actually, I'll talk about Abigail in just a second, but to set the stage right, we have two options for our conversation today. And Abigail, if that's okay with you, I'm going to leave it to our participants to make a decision. So one option is to have a conversation that is a little bit more formal, structured, points, key takeaways, key learnings, and stuff like that, which we're happy to do. And the other option is to have a conversation that is more personal, a conversation that allows us to go into things that maybe we don't normally get to and we don't normally talk about. And I think we have this opportunity because of how deeply I love Abigail, and hopefully she feels somewhat the same for me. And if you would like to, everyone in the chat box, make a vote. Would you like formal or informal for our conversation? We could do either. And I'm very curious about the choice that people will make. So would you prefer a formal or informal?
So what do you think? It's funny.
So the first request was, can we have both? That was...
Oh, nice. Oh, someone formal. Oh, nice. Wow.
Mm-hmm. So we're seeing something very interesting here, and maybe I'll jump into that later. The vast majority is voting for more informal, but also asking for substance and making sure that they leave with actionable items. So,
or as Shelley says, formal, but no one will admit that except me. So.
That may be the truth. That may be the truth. So, Abigail, thank you very much for joining here this afternoon and morning in other places. This is part of our global concert series on Sensemakers. And our mission is to bring the most forward-thinking individuals in the world to share their expertise, especially in a time of transition that we're seeing in this world. And for those of you who don't know Abigail, she is, so she has a background in theater. And with her team, she co-founded the company called Virtuozo. And with her team, what she does is she takes the tools that a theater director may be using to create a theater production, but they bring it to life. They take it to places where people want to make an impact, where people want to make sure that they're being heard, that they're remembered. And they do this in a very experiential way, but one that is also very structured. And today we will talk a little bit about the methodology, but more than that, we will talk about Abigail's experiences and things that she has seen over the years. So thank you very much once again for being here. Before we start with anything else, there's something that I'm dying to ask you. So with everything that you've done, what would you say is maybe one of the moments that you're proudest of professionally? If there's anything that you can share with us.
Wow. Well, I'm lucky to be in a job that allows me to be proud a lot. Sometimes I see the results, like when someone speaks at a conference and I can see them, I can watch them, or there's an event. And other times I can hear from either people I work with or the people around them. So, and you're asking me to find a proudest moment?
Yes,
like one?
Please. Yes, please.
Like choosing which child I love the most.
That should be easy. You only have three.
Yes. So I think one of the things, one of my proudest moments, I'll share two, because why not? Because I'm Israeli and I'm asked something, it doesn't mean they need to answer specifically that. One is one is a CEO of a technology company that I worked with in what I call the developmental program. He came for 6 sessions that were meant to develop him as a communicator to his team, to inside, outside, and as a leader. And he founded a startup, so he's an engineer, really like very comfortable with numbers, less comfortable with people. And then he found himself managing this huge company that has branches all worldwide. So the first 6 sessions were really about bringing his humanity and having him connect to the audience and having him just have a conversation with us and all those things. Now, fast forward, like a year and a half later, he called again. He said, "Hey, can I have another program, like a follow-up program, because his company went through a change and he wanted to think together about the new story he tells." And when he came in, I remember I had him stand up and speak because that's
what you do.
That, yeah. And then I told him, I'll call him John. I said, "Well, John, you're looking at me when you're speaking, and you're so human." And what I loved, the proud moment, was that he said, "Really? I don't even notice it anymore. It's like it's second nature." And for me, that's the proudest thing. The biggest thing is to know that that it became a habit, that it became second nature. Actually, I'll stop there because I can go on forever.
Can't top that, huh? Quick request. Can you maybe lower the volume the way you hear me on your computer? Because I think there's a bit of an echo.
Is it better now?
I think so.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So what I love about that story is that and what I'm planning on getting back to that later in the conversation, is you love how it became second nature, but also what it did for him. So he doesn't need to think about how to do it anymore. He just does it. And there's a phenomena that I've been seeing. I wonder if you've noticed it too. So at least in my Facebook feed and on LinkedIn, I noticed that a lot of people, now publish their profile pic is a picture of them with a microphone or with a neck mic or with a, right, exactly. And that's something that they feel says a lot about how they want to present themselves in the world. I think a lot of people are interested, and we saw in the reactions to this webinar, a lot of people wanted to join. What do you think is so special about speaking or public communication that draws people in and makes them so interested? Why does everyone want to do it?
I don't know. It beats me. Well, I think that one thing is that we communicate, we speak all the time. So it's like, it's not doing something we don't usually do. But there is spread your word. Someone says, make an impact. Ooh. So nice. So I'm going to take that, Shadi. I think there are many more opportunities today to spread your word or to reach audiences that you couldn't reach before. So that's one thing that people are seeing. That's the buzz around that, I think, creates that. But for me, when I think about the interest in speaking or communication, it's not only the people who stand on stage with that Madonna for those 10 minutes, 20 minutes and get that high, but it's mostly because most of when we communicate and when it's really, really important are the small moments, are the moments where we don't have 6 weeks to prepare and we're on a top stage, but when it's the little conversation with someone from our team, it's the board meeting that we have every quarter. Those are the opportunities. And even there's much more interest. I think one reason is people understand or see that you can learn it. I hear less and less people say, well, you're either born with it or you're not. So they understand that there's something you can improve. Another thing is that I think today there's something that we have an abundance of, which is information, and something we have very little of, which is attention. Mm-hmm. So the ratio between attention and information has skewed. So in order to be heard and to be remembered, you have to cut through that noise much more than ever before, now that we have this thing and the whole world in our hands. Yes.
this thing and three other screens in front of us, and we're having a conversation while we have one eye on seeing who's telling us if it's going well or not so well. And yeah, a lot.
Yes.
But
And Eyal, can I ask you a question?
in a second, I would love to, but something came to mind. So following up on what I just asked, so you're also a TED Global speaker trainer. Do you think that TED has anything to do with this rush for speaking? It's just a thought that came to mind.
Yes.
Okay.
That's it. Oh, okay. I think that I mean, what I see many times is people, because they know that we are speaker coaches for the International TED organization, then many times they call us not because they want to speak at TED or not because they are going to speak at TED, but because they understand that there's something about being able to have a short message, to be very human, that they can learn and that they want it. So I see the impact. Shelley, for example, who has been very active on our chat, has been part of a program that I did with, and I have the permission to say the name of that company, with Strauss, which is a large global food company, that they decided it was for International Women's Day. They decided to have voice from inside the organization be heard and give TED style, like short talks about something that has to do with gender, with inequality. And so they took like the form of, this is a great format of a short talk that's personal, that's impactful, that has one idea. And then they pulled different voices from within the organization in a way that created such a wow effect. I mean, that was my second proud moment. So insert second proud moment, sitting there and seeing the impact that an event like that, where you have people from all over the organization speak, can have on the culture of the organization itself. So yes, there's huge.
In a way, I'm curious.
The short answer is yes.
Yeah, and in a way, I think that you've just added a couple of important points about what makes communication or a talk effective. So you said personal, you said short, and you said one main idea. And you said impactful. So these are a few words that you've used when you described these talks. And maybe it's also because people started seeing how talks can do that. Talks can be effective, can be impactful, can make a difference. So maybe that's also part of it.
I think, by the way, we've known it for forever. Like when you think about the greatest speakers and the big movements of people, there's usually some sort of great communicator behind, like igniting that or leading that or calming it down. But Eyal, you didn't let me ask you a question.
Please.
Oh, okay. Can you tell this audience a little bit about who you are and what you do? Because I think you do something amazing. I think you're amazing, and I know you do something amazing.
Actually, Abigail, why don't you tell the audience what I do?
I should have known it's going to.
You know me well enough.
Which is also something, like, now that you mention it, when people, I often find it that when I work with people and they want to come up with a great story, the moment they need the story, they don't have it. They're like, I don't have stories to illustrate that. And then I remember one workshop we did with the whole communications team of a company, and one person saying, I don't have a story to illustrate that. And then someone else from our team said, are you kidding me? Don't you remember the time where blah, 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 blah? So we realized that sometimes, like, doing exactly what you did is a great way to understand what do we do.
Actually, that's true, but I will be honest. And
Finally.
I'll be honest and open. So there's another reason why I did that. And I think it's also something that the audience can remember. When you talk about yourself, it's hard to speak very highly about yourself. So I would have to say what I do. I would have to provide credentials. I would have to somehow build credibility, a lot of things that one does when they self-introduce. But when someone else talks about you, they can do something like this. So in front of me, I now have a testimonial of one of your clients, Abigail, who emailed me before this meeting and said, in any case, I'm a graduate of Virtuozo and Abigail's team, one of the best courses in my life. So someone, when they registered, they said that about you. That's
Oh my God.
incredible. But you couldn't say that about yourself, right? You wouldn't be.
No, I mean, no, me personally, no. That's why, by the way, there's also something that I personally am not a big fan of people calling themselves experts. I'm an expert in, because to me it's like, expert is something other people say about you, I think. But wow, you made my day.
Well, he did. So
Oh, you're gonna tell me who it was?
later.
Okay.
Later.
Yeah, you do so much, but for me, wow, you're a PhD in psychology. Let's start with that, from Chicago. And I've known you since for how many years have I known you?
7 years.
7 years since you started. You brought EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, to Israel, and you started the chapter here. And from what I know about what you do, and I probably know not enough, or just a fraction, you're an organizational consultant, but a good one, meaning that you draw from science, from intuition, from psychology, from a lot of different places, and you can work with individuals and with teams to help them bring, either to help them focus their thinking, and or to help them also communicate in a way that is, I mean, I use you when I want to communicate to, and I feel that I hit a wall. So I think your understanding of people and how they think and how to draw them in is unique.
Thank you. So now you know, guys.
Now we're even.
Now you know. I want to take our conversation to a slightly more practical place for a second now.
Right.
Let's talk about speakers, and let's talk about even experienced speakers. So ones who've stood on stage or spoke in front of their board, or what are some of the main mistakes that you see people still making even after they've been speaking for a while, after they've been practicing for a while? So not the things that a very beginner speaker may do, like the ums and ahs and all those that, well, I do all the time, but people know to try and avoid. But things that the more experienced speakers still make as a mistake.
So I think one thing is to stop. One thing that I see is when experienced communicators or leaders think that they've mastered it, that that's it. They don't need to learn anymore. They don't need to grow anymore. Which is, my favorite is to work with people who are already good and want to upgrade themselves to the next level, because there's so much, when someone is solidly good, there's so much you can learn afterwards. And you can see someone, and I'm not going to go into the politics or the opinions, but just to analyze the speaker. When you see someone like Benjamin Netanyahu, he obviously keeps on learning all the time and adjusting and improving and sharpening his skills all the time. And I think it shows for the audience that he's targeting.
And by the way, in a way, to me, that's the difference between going to training, so you learn a skill, versus working with a coach that helps you perpetually work on your skills and improve. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think there's like two levels. Basically, the first one is you master the technique. Like you're really, really good at the technique. And I think a lot of people stop there. So with all due respect to the people I will talk about, I see the difference between Obama and Bill Clinton. Obama has amazing technique, especially when you see him in talks where he uses the teleprompter. You can see that after you see him again and again, you can see the technique. You can see that he's looking one side and then he's looking on the other side. And then after a while, you're like, okay, he mastered the technique. Bill Clinton, I think, went a step beyond and made it into an art in the way that he takes the content and really creates an intimacy with his audience. So it feels like a conversation. It feels like you're sitting with him one-on-one. I think that's also what great rock singers do that they really pull you in, and you don't just sit back and say, wow, that's a good speaker, but you're pulled into the
How do
person.
they do that?
Uh-huh.
How do they do that, really?
Yes, I mean, for me, that's the most fascinating thing is to see, and this is my number one suggestion to anyone I work with is, because I think it's a constant learning, is every time you see someone doing something great, to reverse engineer, to know that, oh, Bill Clinton or Netanyahu or Oprah Winfrey or Meryl Streep or, oh, wow, she was great, but wait a minute, that great was a result of a series of behaviors. So if we can understand that, reverse engineer it, we can learn it ourselves. So can I share a model?
Yes, please.
So this, and I'm old school. So two things about this. One is I'm old school. Like we barely use slides. Only when sometimes I give keynotes. So then I use slides and clips. But other than that, in workshops, everything and in one-on-ones, everything is created on the spot. It's like there's, I think there's a lot to say about that. For me, it also gives me the freedom because I didn't choose the order of the slides and now I have to work for the slides, but I can really adjust to whatever happens in the moment. That's one. Two, after my life as an artist, I went off to the dark side. I did an MBA, I worked as a consultant, like I went deep into the business world. And I feel that you took the consultant out of the consulting firm, but still the consulting firm is inside me. So I love Venn diagrams and 2x2s. So this is our map of impact and charisma. And it happens here. And for me, if I can demystify charisma for people, I've done my job. And what I deeply believe is that impact, charisma, the unforgettable moments how to be remembered, usually they happen here. When you're connected to your audience, your content, your body, and your voice, all at the same time. And if you look at someone like Bill Clinton, you see that, for example, his connection to the audience, it's not just that he does eye contact. That's one of the things I think that are the difference between a great technician and a wonderful artist. Eye contact is technical, but really seeing you, Eyal, and speaking to you and having my whole attention to you for, even if there are 2,000 people, but I speak to only you for 3 seconds, for 1 or 2 sentences, that creates a wow. That brings the person here immediately.
I want to say something about that, if I may.
Please,
So,
everything.
and actually, it's specifically about Bill Clinton. So, one of the trainings that he's gone through early on is the process communication model, and we can freely talk about it because he's allowed us. But process communication model is one of the things that we at Sensemakers are bringing throughout the world, and one other way that he does what you just said about the connecting even in 2 sentences is he knows the different personality types that are in the audience, and he knows how to tailor the same exact message to all 6 different types of energy that are in the room. So each one of them exactly feels like he's speaking directly to them. So that's another way that he does that, and connecting also through the exact words, and of course posture and everything else that he employs. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, I think that when we think about ourselves, and I like to ask that when I do a workshop, I said, like, who here is here once in a while? And not a lot of people raise their hands, but really we all are. And for me, that's another thing that like if I meet you for a beer and I'm talk to you about the vacation that I was planning to take but had to cancel because of COVID, I will be here because I'm very comfortable with you. I'm connected to what I'm saying, and I feel comfortable. But when it becomes high stakes, when the time is limited, the audience is more intimidating. I'm speaking to my board. I'm speaking to my team, and on a situation like that, we tend to forget this or to sabotage this. And it's all about learning those tools to bring us back to this place of ourselves. That's my personal belief.
So I love your point about not using slides, because if it's with sticky notes, you can pull out the sticky notes in any order that you want. So show the model again, if you may. So one circle was the audience and connecting with the audience. The second was content.
Yeah.
So what about the content makes a great communicator create connection? Is it making it relevant to the audience? Is that
Um, yes, I think it's especially for these two. There's the what you do before and how you prepare, which is also a mistake that a lot of experienced communicators make, which don't prepare, they
they
wing
stop
it
preparing?
sometimes. Yes. Um, and so there's how you prepare, which is thinking not what I want to say, but where what I want to say meets the audience. So why should they care? Why should they listen? Why should they give me their attention for the foreseeable future? So it's both of these, and there's ways to think about the content. I like to think about it again. I like I think a little bit like a consultant. So think about what's the end result and then reverse engineer. But like even asking ourselves a few questions, like who are they and who are they right now? Because the same person is not the same audience on Monday at 9 a.m. or on Friday at 5 p.m. or after they've heard great news from their company or after they went through a round of cuts. Same people, not the same audience. And for this audience, just asking myself, how would I define success of this meeting or this presentation? What's my goal? What's something I can measure? What will they do or think differently afterwards? And then from there, cut back to the content. So therefore, what stories can I tell? What data can I share? What would enhance that message? So, but it's not only that. I think that the one mistake that I see a lot of speakers or communicators do is focus on this too much, and then almost like you work for your PowerPoint, work for your content. So come up on stage. Stage can be the boardroom, can be a meeting, can be any place where you have live people, or it can be a Zoom, and say, okay, I have this text in my mind, and my goal is to just say the words in the order that I planned them.
Right.
Now, Eyal, have you ever seen anyone say, wow, she was great. It's obvious that she said all the words that she planned to say in the order she plans to say it.
No, that's not precisely the type of positive feedback that I would hear. No.
Not so much, or that you would give. So it's also
so the things that I would say, right, is oh my God, something in me shifted. So that would be right. So if you're able to create a shift in your audience, that's big. But it's hard. It's very difficult to design content so it creates a shift in your audience. Very difficult.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm so glad it is. No, I'm just
right.
But the connection with it, like you see, Eyal, the difference between someone who's just saying the words and someone who's really living them, who is excited about them, who believes. Like there's a mirror effect between speaker and audience. If I want you to get excited, I have to get excited. There's this scientist Uri Hasson.
Yes, but you have to get excited, not act excited.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, so agreed. Yes. I also think, especially these days, we really want authenticity. We really want the real person.
Yeah.
And we can see when someone is acting and when someone is real.
I think you're right.
Right.
So I think so.
So also, when you're looking... like your version of excited would be very different than mine, as we can see now. Like I'm like, oh, like and you're like, yours is like, intelligent, excited.
I'm seriously excited right now.
Yes. Oh, you know those people that you tell them a joke and they say, "Oh,
that's funny."
Really funny.
Yeah. So when
what our audience doesn't know is that we share weird humor.
Actually, we send WhatsApp messages to one another that we think that only that other person will understand. So
puns and dad jokes are
puns and dad jokes. When you're looking at the world of public communication these days, do you see any major shifts that are happening in this world, or things that we as communicators should be paying attention to when when we're communicating in the environment. So the environment is chaotic. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of fear that is being injected into all of this. If we're talking about this specific crisis, any shifts that you're saying that we should pay attention to when we communicate?
I feel like I need to say yes and then think about what they are. So yes, but yes.
No, take your time.
I see some shifts. It's funny because some of the shifts are really somehow, I think, going back to something that's almost tribal and primal. In say, like being aware that technique and content are not enough, and going back to wanting and being aware of the importance of stories. I'm seeing that in leadership so much. You probably are seeing that too, Eyal.
So this is very interesting. Just yesterday, I participated in a webinar that some information marketer actually gave, and it was a wow webinar for me. It was wow because what he did is he taught the 21 secrets of something. Who cares? But what he did is he flashed a slide with one of those 21 secrets for about 10 seconds. Then it came back to him. And what he did is he told stories that exemplified that point. So it was 90% stories, maybe 10% talking about the content. So
yes, and that's something. Wow, I can go on forever about this. The story, the thing with like, there's a trend of storytelling now that everybody teaches storytelling, talks about storytelling. But dude, we've been storytelling since the ancient days, and it is the natural way for our brain. If we want to be remembered, that's one of the best ways. Now, I think what you're talking about also is what I like to call strategic storytelling, which is what are the messages I want to convey, and then rather than say them, find the stories that will illustrate them. And one, our audience will remember them more because our brain is primed to remember stories that have details and sensory language. And two, the audience will reach their own conclusions. So many times I will bring a leader, have them tell a personal story, bring a new audience, and then the person just tells the story of 2 minutes, and then I stop them and I would ask the audience, okay, just based on these 2 minutes of this personal story, is nothing to do with work. What are some qualities of this person as a leader? What does this person care about? And it's always mind-blowing to the person telling that personal story how much there is inside a story. And the more you can let the audience reach their own conclusions, I mean, we have to treat our audiences like what they are, which is intelligent.
So when we're talking about stories, there are actually a few people that I have been following to see how they talk about stories in specific contexts. And there are two sentences that I've recently heard that I really like, that are related to maybe the structure of the content, maybe the structure of the story, but in a very business way. Okay, so one is, if you confuse, you lose. I love that, and I think that it's very accurate. So certainly, when you're trying to pitch an idea, you're trying to convince, you're trying to influence, you're trying to sell, you're trying to recruit. If you confuse, you lose. And a second way to say the exact same thing is, a confused mind always says no. And that is also, so when you are bombarded with a lot of information, you kind of have to shelter yourself. So you say, no, first you have to protect. And that goes, I've actually recently experienced that. And I got feedback for something that I did, which showed me that a confused mind almost said no. I got a second chance. I wrote a business proposal, and I sent it to my clients, and it's people who already know me. They've worked with me already. And I heard nothing back, got no feedback. And then I had another meeting with the partners, the founders of the company. So I came in and we were meeting and we did the work that we had to do. And then very gently, I asked about the proposal that I sent. And they started moving in extreme discomfort in their chairs. They were not very comfortable with the question. And I said, guys, what's going on? Tell me. And they said, to be honest, we're not sure it's needed. We saw what you wrote, and we're a little bit confused about what you meant. So, and then we started breaking this down, and we found exactly the points of confusion. We removed them, and now we're moving forward. Now it's a yes. So when I removed the confusion, it became a yes, and that's very interesting to see.
Cool. And Eyal, if we can just take what you just told me and look at what you did that we can learn from the way you told the story. Can I do that? Because I think that one thing, were you remembering that moment when you were speaking to me?
Yes.
That people moving. So there's an amazing phenomenon that I see 100% of the time so far. That because I was imagining people moving uncomfortably in their seats, and I find that when that's what we spoke about the content also. What makes it alive is if you remember it and live it. It's not the words. It's you visualizing it and remembering it while you're telling me your story. So that's one thing that I saw. Another one is that you used what I like to call storyizing elements, a few things that make stories sticky and memorable. For example, you used dialogue. You said, I wrote it, I tried to write it down, but I have no idea where. Oh, yes, you didn't say that, you didn't say, I asked them what they were missing, or you said, I asked them. Guys, what's going on? And what that does, that's the way we naturally tell stories, but like business stories, we tend to forget about the importance of dialogue. Because now I'm involved, I'm seeing different characters. I'm seeing you asking, guys, what's going on? I'm seeing them now saying, hey, yes, but it's uncomfortable. And you only had 2 lines of dialogue, but it immediately brought it to life. So little tips to be remembered. And
cool. Let me share in this also how I structure stories, which is what I did here as well. I always try to say what the situation was and build some type of drama or conflict into it. Then talk about an action. So what did I do? And then about the outcome. And when people remember these 3 stages of the story, I think it's also easy to put almost anything into that simple structure.
you know the Seinfeld. Do you watch Seinfeld, or have you watched?
Who
Seinfeld?
remembers? That's years ago.
That's
The
they have the
reruns.
yada 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 episode.
Sure.
Where they say, I don't know, I met this girl and yada yada yada. I woke up in her apartment the next morning, and we're like, what the yada? That's the interesting stuff. And I think what you're talking about is exactly that. So many times the stories miss that, what happened, and the tension and the build up, and go just with, I was so nervous, it wasn't going well, but at the end we got to the result.
Yeah. Yeah. So we talked a bit about the shifts in terms of what we need to focus more on when we're communicating in this era, in this time. And if I may ask a personal question about your business, about Virtuozo, about you, are you seeing any changes in your business? I can say that our business at Sensemakers was impacted in a big way once borders were shut. We're used to traveling all over, and yeah, I'm talking about COVID.
Yes.
So I'm curious to hear how are things going? But really, if you're seeing any changes in how you deliver what you do or what you do.
So I mean, first of all, definitely. I think that we've been seeing changes also before COVID, but different changes like big companies understanding that the importance of communication and the importance of training all layers and starting from the top, like a lot of things that are really interesting in culture and how to make board meetings more interesting. But then COVID happened, and as we know, the world went but then after the world went interesting, for me at least, for us, really interesting things started to happen. One is the shift to working on video. And we were on Zoom before Zoom was a thing. It's funny, we were one of the first users. We have like one of the first accounts, and it was a new thing. Why? Because we work a lot with people from all over the world, and so a lot of the work is on video. definitely when someone wants to strategize communication or wants to think about the content,
Sure.
but also when they want to practice things about their presence and their personal impact and body and
So you
voice.
needed a camera there anyways.
Sorry?
You needed a camera on that person anyways. When you were coaching them and training them, you wanted to have the camera.
Although we don't use camera. We don't, my belief is that we are our own worst audience. So one of the things yesterday, I was doing a Zoom workshop and they said, oh, give us one tip at the end. I said, don't practice in front of the mirror. And they were like, what? Really? Another tip for Zoom, hide self-view. It's great because you don't see yourself all the time, cognitive overload. So we were very used to working on
Wait, why not practice in front of the mirror?
Wow, so much to say. Practice in front of either people or, I mean, we've had executives draw smiley faces and practice in front of them. We had an executive who is a Buddhist put all her Buddha dolls and practice in front of them, because the whole idea of the way that I believe you get to that place of charisma and impact is when you are forgetting yourself, not when you're aware of what your hands are doing. It's terrible. They become like this obstacle. When you watch yourself, you're focused usually on the wrong things. But when you forget yourself and you're completely giving yourself to the audience, those are the magic moments. So the mirror does not really give you any helpful information, as well as watching your own videos by yourself. I mean, watching with us, with giving feedback, with what to watch is different than, so yeah. So, but then, so a few things happen. One is companies that came to us with requests of how to speak on, how to make an impact on video, and sometimes even without video, on audio only. Also, a big company
So podcasts or conference calls.
Podcasts, right? Podcast conference calls. That some companies work only with conference calls today, right, now that there's no in-person. Also, how do you lead? How do you manage? How do you lead when you don't have that coffee corner conversation, when you can't really sense your audience? So we said, you have coffee? Oh,
the virtual cup of coffee, yes.
The yellow. You see, I wore different, so nobody is offended. No football fan, because I'm a big fan of soccer, football. So I'm equally offensive to all sides, or not offensive.
So bring us back. So they're asking for tips on communicating via different media. What else are you saying?
And also workshops of how do you manage and how do you lead virtually?
Yes.
How do you lead virtual teams? And it's leading in the, how do you create, for example, I heard they say, well, I'm having this great meeting with my team. It ends, and I don't know if they're going to go off and do what we agreed on. Like, how do you create motivation? How do you, like, all those things? Suddenly there's this whole world. Another thing that happened because of COVID is leadership programs. We work with a huge pharma company that they bring their leaders from different places to one condensed leadership program. And now after the initial shock, they switch it all online. So a lot of interesting stuff happening in this new world.
Yeah, and I think that at least in the earlier days, or a few years ago, you were very famous for the work that you've been doing with TED, and you still have an insider angle into that. And I know a lot of people are curious about, so what is happening with TED these days? So no travel. People, are they going to get into a large hall again? And do you know anything about TED and how it's evolving? Can you share anything about that with us?
So TED's a big conference, which is in Vancouver once a year for 4.5 days of about 100 speakers, was planned for April. And then what they realized, which I think is really interesting at TED, is that it's not about, okay, let's just move it online. Because so much of the conference, part of the conference is the content, part of a conference like TED or other professional conferences where you have a series of talks is the cumulative effect. Some of it is the networking. So they understood that they need to think differently. And so
Mm-hmm.
rather than just moving it online, they changed the concept to, I think it's 6 weeks, like a 6-week event where you have,
Wow.
every day you have something. And some of them are deeper conversations of 2 or 3 or 4 people of 45 minutes. Some of them are online networking situations. And some of them are the small talks. Some of the talks were filmed before as well. But it's really, and that I think is really important when we think about the move from offline to virtual in general, virtual communications. It's not that the only difference is that we are opening a camera versus standing on a stage. I think we need to think about it differently because the audience is in a different mindset. What do
Yeah,
you think?
and
Go
I
ahead.
I, I think it's super interesting, and we found ourselves with part of our programs. So one of the programs that we deliver with one of the largest business schools in Russia, it's typically a 3-day immersive. So it's a 3-module program, and each one of these 3 modules is 3 days intensive immersive programs inside the campus. Uh,
It's Kokovo, right?
Yes, it's Kokovo. The first 2 modules were delivered this way, and then COVID happened. So what do? So we have the Sensemakers platform for online delivery. We were ready to do it online, but do we bring all of our guest speakers and we do 8 hours a day and try that this way? So uh, the truth is that that's pretty much what we tried to do. So we tried to deliver that program. Um, and most of the reactions were okay, not as excited as in the in-person experience, but we're okay. We felt that the okay was not enough, so other programs that we've been delivering as day-long programs, we have broken them down and we're spreading them over a longer period of time, and we're seeing good reactions and very good results. So people now have time to practice and
Right.
not just learn. So that's an advantage. But what I love about what you shared about TED is that they've allowed themselves to truly rethink the entire model. So it's not just the entire model, and that's brave. That's brave, maybe necessary, but also brave. Going back to the actual speaking, if I may, I know that for a lot of people on the call today, um, there's one thing that is very important. When they have a message, they want it to be remembered. They want what they share to be remembered. So it can be an executive that is presenting in front of the board and needs to be remembered. It can be a candidate for an executive position that is preparing for a job interview and needs to be remembered. It can be a salesperson that is making a pitch and needs to be remembered. In whatever message you have, you want to be remembered. So I would love if you can share a few ideas and thoughts that you have about what we can do as communicators to increase the likelihood of being remembered.
Um, sure. Now, my first thought was, yeah, you come from a family that is deeply rooted in theater.
Yes.
I mean, your father is a director, your mother an actor, and your brother is a musical
My
theater.
mother is an actress. She's not an actor.
Do you know that trend? I don't know whether I should say actress or actor. She's
Really? Oh, there's a trend? Oh, I didn't
yeah,
know
yeah.
that.
Oh
Okay.
yes.
So,
Okay.
so
But
thank you
anyway,
for
like yeah.
on stage anyways. So,
Yes.
right.
So, and I think that one of the things that helped me and Michael, my partner, and our team think about how to be remembered um, from very early times, like 10, 12 years ago, was that we come from theater, and that's the challenge for a lot of actors, because actors need to go and audition. And in the audition, you have 2 minutes, you have to make an impact, and you have to be remembered when everyone else looks like you, have the same text, etc. So finding out what are those things that make someone more memorable um, is, I think, helpful. And the same thing, by the way, we see when we work with startup founders who go to
A pitch fest. Yeah.
exactly, like the investor has already heard like 200. And I think that it can be boiled down to a few things, and it all goes back to those 3 circles. I think one thing is to be super clear about your one message. Like I can't stress it enough how important it is, especially today. We're in an era of collective ADHD, of a ton of messages. How do you cut through the noise?
Can you give an
So,
example of that, of
yes,
a one message?
yes. So Michael, my business partner, likes to say, go deep rather than going wide. So for example, I'll give an example from a TED speaker. No, you know what? I'll give an example from a CEO we worked with who was planning for a visit from his global leader, and it was a week-long visit. So we helped him strategize the message for the whole week for the whole week. And we boiled it down because it takes time to understand, like, what's the one thing you want them to come out with. So he boiled it down to, I want my CEO or my global leader to say, wow, they're doing a great job in that country. I should give him all the budget to continue. That was because his goal was, because we analyzed, what's your goal? I want him to leave me alone and to get the budget and to trust me. Oh, okay. So what does he need to, like, what's the one thing? Because I think that what I see a lot that doesn't help to be remembered is the spaghetti method. Mm-hmm. You know, the thing about throwing as many spaghettis on the walls to see if something sticks. So it's like, okay, let me bombard you with a lot of things and maybe something will stick. That is not a good way to be remembered. It's taking the time to think, what's my one. So after he knew that one message, everything he did, everything he said was illustrating and reinforcing that one thing. So I think that's key
perfect.
To be remembered.
And I see this so many times. When you want to influence someone else, you add more, right? Let me give you another reason, and another, and another, and another. And we think that, oh my God, I've built such a detailed case. I must win this argument, but it doesn't work this way.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yes, and so that and being really being passionate when you speak, being in it. It's contagious. We don't. When we think about, like, I will invite, you know what, you, Eyal, what's one speaker or communicator that you really remember for a good reason? Because
I'll use intentionally a famous example, Simon Sinek. So yeah, Simon Sinek, I remember him very, very strongly for drawing circles, right?
Right, which is, by the way, note, I like anything that has a scientific stamp. I get excited about, and I know that I get excited about. So our brain, I believe, is a very efficient machine that will go into power save mode whenever it has a chance. So whenever it takes a pattern, whenever it knows what's coming on. So doing something different, like Simon Sinek doing talks and always drawing circles, more chances of being memorable. So you remember him as the guy who draws circles? What else?
Oh, I actually remember the message, because on that talk, he repeated it 7 times, right? So people buy why you do, not what you do. Yeah.
And it also, I assume, it also really, really connects with something deep in you, with a value that you have or a belief that you have.
Maybe. Yes. There's a deep resonance in that for me. Actually, there's a question from Oren, who's asking a really interesting question. And please, guys, feel free to type in your questions either in the Q&A box or in the chat. It doesn't matter. But Oren is saying, and I'm not going to read it the way he said it, because he is comparing...
You're so much more emotional than I am, which is amazing. Because
okay, I'll read it the way he wrote it.
It's not about perception, Eyal. It's not about reality.
So no, it's actually about how you presented the reality about me before. So Oren is saying, what if you're more like Eyal and less like Abigail? Meaning, you're not naturally a person who is emotionally excited and extroverted, really. So you come outwards with your emotions. How do you come across as a presenter? How do you convey your passion if you're not overtly excited?
So Eyal, how do you convey your passion? Because I think you really convey your passion and you're magnetic. So what is it that you do?
I don't know, but I think it's better if you tell me what I do. I think it's more helpful in this case. So,
Um,
and if there's something that I've done today that you were able to see, or get me to talk about something that's exciting to me, that I'm happy to do that, so people can see it. I
can you
don't want
tell
to
me about,
just talk about myself. So
can you tell me about your baby? Something cute that he's done?
about Lavi, yes. So Lavi is our baby boy. He's almost 2 years old, and I'll just say one thing about him. So the one thing I love a lot about him, but one thing that I love is the way he approaches animals. So he will see a cat at the end of the street, and he'll go, cat, cat, and you see that connection to the animal. Now we have a rabbit at home, and he'll see the rabbit from afar, and he'll go, cat, cat. So that was an example.
Wow, that I think that, well, if I could ask the audience, I would, but you can also type it. I can ask them to type down.
Yeah, yeah,
No, no, I know we
do
don't have
that.
a lot of time. Type down things that you've seen Eyal do now that you think worked well, as far as feeling that he's really connected to what he's saying and really emotional. And I think that I'll tell you a few thoughts I have. I think it's a range. Now, it's really interesting to me that even today, in this less than an hour, I've seen a lot of your range. I know that there's more, but I think that you're there's the thoughtful, deep thinker, deeply curious, and deeply listening, Eyal. And that's one energy. And now you had an energy that was, without losing all of that, was like playful and excited. And it's
Guys,
your
pay attention. She's not really talking about me. She's talking about you. Okay?
what? Who's?
Yeah, I'm saying for the audience, you're
Oh.
talking about them, not really about me, because
No, no,
each
it's
one
an
of them
example.
has a range that they
We
can
all
tap
have a
into.
range, and we only use, like, you know that. I think, yeah, of course, I think I know that you know that. We tend to use a very small part of our range, or to compartmentalize. I don't really know how to say that word, but I've worked once with this guy who was Andrew, the banker, with a tie and with that. And then with working with him, I heard that with his friends, he's Andy and he's the life of the party. But he will never bring Andy into the work place, which is a mistake because the range. And I saw your range. I also saw, like in your case, I'm like a little bit Italian in my excitement, which is not good or bad, just is. What can I do? And you're my sense would be deeper with more gravitas in your excitement. It's not less excitement, it's different. And it's not, and I think that it's not about you learning to be like me or someone who's super geeky learning to be super Italian. I think it's the opposite. Take
So
your qualities and upgrade them.
I think it's really there's something more also, and I think it's remembering that our audience is diverse. So there are people who are going to naturally connect with a very highly excited and outgoing personality, and others who will connect with more of the imaginative person who is able to speak of abstract concepts, or the person who's able to provide details and scientific proof,
This is my
or,
other
or
model that
speaking about emotions. Yeah, there you go.
yes,
Uh,
people are more conceptual, people who need more concrete, people who really need the emotions, others who need the facts.
so we need to be able to speak to the entire range, right? Is that what you would teach?
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
know I took your course, your PCM course, which was amazing. And that's I think another way of looking at the different people, being aware of who we are and that we're not speaking to ourselves and adjusting. Like Eyal, I've seen you be like playful and excited, and you've maybe seen me be more pensive and listening. And
Absolutely. And when I think when working on a public communication event that you have, I think what's important is to remember that and maybe bring the entire range or as much as you can of that range into the room. I think
or
that is
at least do it in rehearsal. Like
At least in rehearsal. At least in rehearsal, right?
Right. I mean, that's one of the ways that I get people to do stuff that's outside of their box, saying, this is a laboratory. We'll try it now. Maybe you'll never do it in front of an audience. And then maybe they find out that, voila, as you say in Hebrew.
So we're about to go over time. And there's one last question that I really want to ask you, because I know you well. And I know that you deeply care not just about the work and the outcome, you care about what it does to people. And to me, one of the most beautiful things that can happen with the type of work that we do is when there's really when we transform someone's life or we have a deep impact on them. Are you able to share with us an example of a person that you know you were able to help transform in a deep way because of the type of work that you've done? And talk about them, not about you. So it's more comfortable for you.
I only want to talk about that, yes.
I know.
Yes, I'm thinking also how to be, I'll talk about someone who gave me permission to talk about her and has been speaking about our work for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she's going to be a guest on your show, right? Maya El-Khalal?
So Maya El-Khalal is actually going to be a guest in about 3 weeks. Yes, absolutely.
So Maya, in 2009, when I started doing this work in Israel together with Michael, my business partner, she was the first meeting we had here. She was co-organizing an event, a TEDx event. And then she decided to take a program for herself to improve. And she talks about, I'm going to quote what she says. She said that she had a deep fear of public speaking, that she knew that it's going to up her career. She's an entrepreneur. She really knew how important it is. And she said, I will invest 60 hours. Like we worked together in 12 sessions, a long and deep program. And what I loved was that and afterwards she started as a career. She started hosting events. She became the person who loves the stage, who made it from being scared, made it into a career. But what I loved the most that she told me was that it transformed not only her on stage, but in general, the way that she communicates with even the one-on-ones. And so that's one example that I can share.
It's an incredible one. I've actually heard her say, they helped me overcome one of my greatest fears in life. And that's amazing when you're able to do that for someone. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And on that note, we need to end because we're 3 minutes over time. And I want to thank you very much, Abigail, for being here with us today. And thank everyone who was with us. And we hope to see you on the next Global Concert or another Sensemakers event or at a Virtuozo training. And see everyone. Thank you very much. Or a combination, right? See you later. Bye. Thank you.
Guys.